What if the biggest problems in your life did not come from other people, or bad luck, or difficult situations, but from the parts of yourself you never learned to control? Most people spend their lives trying to fix what is outside. They try to control outcomes. They try to manage people. They try to avoid discomfort. But no matter how much they adjust the external world, something still feels off. Because the internal world remains the same. Uncontrolled. Reactive. Unfocused. And that internal state quietly shapes everything. It shapes how you speak, how you react, how you decide, how you live. This is why two people can face the same situation and experience completely different outcomes. One remains calm, focused, intentional. The other becomes overwhelmed, reactive, uncertain. The difference is not the situation. It is self-control. Thinkers like Marcus Aurelius understood this clearly. You do not need to control everything. You need to control yourself. Because once you control yourself, you control your responses. And your responses shape your life. This is where mental mastery begins. Not in changing the world, but in changing how you interact with it. Through discipline. Through awareness. Through control. You begin to take ownership of your mouth, your mood, your money, your mind. And once you do, everything becomes more stable, more predictable, more intentional. Because your life is no longer driven by impulse, but by decision. And that shift changes everything. If you are ready to take control, subscribe to this channel to get more of this. Because mental mastery is built, not given. 1. Control your mouth. Words feel harmless. They leave your mouth quickly. They disappear into the air. And in the moment, they seem small. But words have consequences. Long after they are spoken. A single sentence can damage trust, change relationships, create conflict, or reveal more than you intended. And most of the time, this happens without planning, without intention, without awareness. Because speech is often reactive, not controlled. You feel something, and you express it immediately. You think something, and you say it instantly. There is no pause, no filter, no consideration. And that lack of control creates problems. Not because you intended harm, but because you acted without thinking. This is why many regrets are verbal. Things said in anger. Things said in frustration. Things said without awareness. And once spoken, they cannot be taken back. The Stoic mindset changes this completely. You stop treating speech as automatic, and start treating it as intentional. You create a pause between thought and expression. And in that pause, you decide. Is this necessary? Is this helpful? Is this worth saying? Most of the time, the answer is no. Because not every thought needs to be expressed. Not every feeling needs to be shared. Not every reaction needs to be spoken. And once you realize this, you begin to speak less, but with more purpose, more clarity, more control. And that changes how people perceive you. Because your words are no longer constant. They are selective. They carry weight. When you speak, people listen. Because you are not always speaking. You are choosing your moments. This also creates presence. Because silence is powerful. It creates space. It creates curiosity. It creates attention. When you are not filling every moment with words, you stand out. Not by speaking more, but by speaking better. This does not mean becoming silent. It means becoming precise. You say what matters. And nothing more. This also protects you. Because the more you speak, the more you reveal your emotions, your insecurities, your reactions. And not everything needs to be exposed. Control over your mouth is control over your boundaries. You decide what is shared and what remains internal. This creates strength. Because you are not easily read, not easily influenced, not easily pulled into unnecessary conversations. You remain grounded, focused, intentional. This also improves your listening. Because when you speak less, you observe more. You notice details. You understand people. You pick up on tone, on behavior, on intention. And that awareness gives you an advantage. Because you are not reacting. You are understanding. And understanding leads to better responses, better decisions, better outcomes. This is what makes controlled speech powerful. Not silence alone, but intentional communication. You are not trying to dominate conversations. You are trying to direct them. With clarity. With precision. With purpose. And that creates influence. Because influence is not about volume. It is about impact. And impact comes from control. Over time, this becomes natural. You no longer feel the need to speak constantly. You become comfortable with silence. Comfortable with pause. Comfortable with thinking before speaking. And that comfort creates confidence. Because you are not reacting. You are choosing. And that choice is what creates mental mastery. 2. Control your mood. Your mood feels automatic. Something happens. And your state changes. Instantly. Without warning. Without control. A small inconvenience shifts your focus. A negative comment changes your energy. An unexpected problem disrupts your entire day. And it feels normal. Because it happens so often. But there is something hidden in this pattern. Your mood is being controlled. Not by you. But by external events. And anything controlled externally will always be unstable. Because the outside world is unpredictable. It changes constantly. It does not adjust to your expectations. It does not follow your plans. And if your internal state depends on it, you will always feel inconsistent. Calm one moment. Frustrated the next. Focused 1 hour. Distracted the next. This is not because life is chaotic. It is because your response is uncontrolled. The Stoic mindset changes this. You stop trying to control events. And start controlling your reaction to them. You recognize something important. Events do not decide your mood. Your interpretation does. 2 people experience the same situation. One remains calm. The other becomes overwhelmed. The difference is not the event. It is the interpretation. An interpretation is something you can train. When something happens, you pause. Instead of reacting immediately, you observe what you are feeling without acting on it. And that moment of awareness creates distance. Distance between stimulus and response. And in that distance, you gain control. Because you are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing. At first, This feels difficult. Because emotions are fast. They demand immediate attention. They create urgency. But with practice, you slow them down. Not by suppressing them, but by observing them. And observation reduces intensity. Because emotions gain strength when they are followed instantly, but lose strength when they are noticed without reaction. This creates stability. Because your mood is no longer shifting constantly. It becomes steady, grounded, controlled. You still feel, but you are not controlled by what you feel. You experience emotions, but you do not become them. And this changes everything. Because now, you can remain calm. Even when things go wrong. You can stay focused. Even when distractions appear. You can act clearly. Even under pressure. This is what creates mental strength. Not the absence of emotion, but the control of it. Because controlled emotion leads to controlled action. And controlled action leads to better outcomes. Over time, this becomes natural. You do not react as quickly. You do not become overwhelmed as easily. You remain steady. Even in situations that once affected you. And that steadiness creates confidence. Because you trust your ability to handle what happens without losing control. And that trust creates calm. Because you are no longer afraid of how you might react. You know. You can remain stable. And that stability is what creates mental mastery. 3. Control your money. Money is not just about earning. It is about behavior. It reflects your habits, your discipline, your decisions. And most people do not lose control of money suddenly. They lose it gradually. Through small choices. Repeated over time. Spending without thinking. Buying without intention. Choosing comfort over discipline. And each decision feels small. Insignificant. Easy to ignore. But over time, these small decisions create larger consequences. Financial stress. Lack of freedom. Dependence. And uncertainty. Because money is not just a resource. It is a reflection of control. When you lack control, your money becomes unstable. When you have control, your money becomes structured, predictable, directed. The Stoic mindset applies discipline here. You do not spend emotionally. You do not react to desire instantly. You pause. You think. You decide. Is this necessary? Is this aligned with my priorities? Is this worth the cost? And that pause creates awareness. Because most spending is automatic. It is driven by impulse, not intention. And once you become aware, you interrupt that pattern. You stop reacting and start deciding. This does not mean you avoid spending. It means you spend consciously. You understand the difference between what you want and what you need. And that clarity creates discipline. Because your decisions are no longer random. They are aligned with your goals, with your priorities, with your direction. This also creates freedom. Because when your money is controlled, you are not dependent on constant income or unstable conditions. You have structure. You have awareness. You have discipline. And that creates stability. Because you are not reacting financially. You are directing your resources. And direction creates control. Over time, This builds confidence. Because you trust your decisions. You trust your habits. You trust your discipline. And that trust removes anxiety. Because uncertainty is reduced. You know where your money is going. You know why it is going there. And that clarity creates calm. Because your financial state is no longer chaotic. It is controlled. And that control is what creates independence. Because you are not reacting. You are deciding. And decision is power. If you want your words to carry real power, this is where it begins. Subscribe to this channel to get more of this. Control your mind. Your mind is always active. Always thinking. Always generating ideas. Questions. Doubts. Scenarios. And most of the time, you are not controlling it. You are following it. Every thought feels real. Every idea feels important. Every worry feels urgent. And because of that, you move from one thought to another. Without direction. Without awareness. Without control. This creates mental noise. Too many thoughts. Too many possibilities. Too many distractions. And over time, this noise becomes overwhelming. Because your mind is not focused. It is scattered. Pulled in different directions. By every thought that appears. This is where most problems begin. Not in reality. But in perception. Because the way you think shapes how you see everything. And if your thinking is uncontrolled, your experience becomes chaotic. You overthink. You doubt. You imagine negative outcomes. You create problems that do not even exist. And then you react to them as if they are real. This is the trap. You are not responding to reality. You are responding to your thoughts about reality. The Stoic mindset breaks this pattern. You stop identifying with every thought and start observing them. You recognize something powerful. You are not your thoughts. You are the one noticing them. And that distinction changes everything. Because once you see your thoughts as separate from yourself, you gain control. You can question them. You can ignore them. You can choose which ones to follow. And which ones to let go. This creates clarity. Because your mind is no longer crowded with unnecessary thinking. It becomes focused. Directed. Intentional. Instead of reacting to every thought, you filter. You decide. You guide your attention. And attention is one of the most powerful tools you have. Because whatever you focus on expands. If you focus on problems, they grow. If you focus on fear, it intensifies. If you focus on distraction, it multiplies. But if you focus on what matters, on what is real, on what you can control, your mind becomes stable. Because your attention is directed, not scattered. This also reduces overthinking. Because overthinking is simply uncontrolled attention. It is your mind looping. Without direction. Without purpose. Repeating the same thoughts. Without resolution. And the way to stop it is not to think more, but to think less. With more intention. You shift from endless thinking to focused thinking. You ask, is this useful? Is this actionable? If the answer is no, you let it go. And that practice creates mental discipline. Because you are no longer following every thought. You are directing them. Over time, This changes your entire mental state. You feel calmer. Because your mind is not overloaded. You feel clearer. Because your thoughts are structured. You feel more in control. Because your attention is guided. And that control is what creates mental mastery. Because your mind is no longer controlling you. You are controlling it. If you've stayed through this, then something has already changed. Not everything. But enough. Enough to see yourself differently. Enough to recognize patterns. Enough to understand where control begins. Because control is not external. It is internal. It is built through awareness. Through discipline. Through repetition. You have seen the areas. Your mouth. Your mood. Your money. Your mind. These are not random. They are foundational. Because they influence everything. How you communicate. How you react. How you decide. How you live. And when these are uncontrolled, your life feels unstable. Unpredictable. Reactive. But when these are controlled, everything changes. You speak with intention. You remain calm under pressure. You make better decisions. You think clearly. And that creates a different life. Not instantly. But gradually. Through consistent action. Through repeated control. Through daily discipline. This is what Stoicism teaches. Not perfection. But progress. Not control of everything. But control of yourself. And that is enough. Because once you control yourself, you control your direction. And your direction shapes your future. So do not try to apply everything at once. Start small. Pause before one word. Control one reaction. Think through one decision. And repeat. Because repetition creates change. And change creates control. And control creates power. Real power. The kind that does not depend on circumstances. On people. On outcomes. But exists within you. If this changed the way you think, subscribe to this channel to get more of this. Because mental mastery is not something you find. It is something you build.